It's time to talk about SRVs. It took me a while to make up my mind about the Scorpion SRV. There's a lot to consider when judging this newcomer against its already established counterpart, the Scarab. For over half a decade, the Scarab has been in a class of its own, so anything new has to be compared against it. And that's exactly what I'm hoping to accomplish. I've broken this video down into a few parts: maneuverability, utility, and lethality. As well, there's some other stuff that I want to talk about that wouldn't really fit into one of these more broad topics. At first glance, I'm guessing a lot of people assume that the Scorpion is going to be less maneuverable than the Scarab, but that's not necessarily the case. Don't get me wrong, if you're experienced with the Scarab, it still blows the Scorpion out of the water in that department. But if you're a new player, or you've been burned so badly by the Scarab's frequent spinouts, then the Scorpion might be for you. The Scorpion tops out somewhere around the mid-30s, and that's if you're on flat, even terrain. Realistically, you'll be looking at the 20s as your top speed. While it might take longer to reach your destination, it makes for way fewer spinouts. Speed is only half the equation though when we're talking about why the Scarab can be so hard to control. The other is weight. Simply put, the Scorpion is heavier. Much heavier. You can feel it sticking to the surface. In my hours of test driving the Scorpion for this video, I only had a couple times where I lost control where I wasn't deliberately trying to slide out or flip myself over. So it's for that reason that I consider the Scorpion a solid choice for new players, or a player who's had bad luck in the past. However, if your goal is to cover as much ground as fast as you can, like you would for exobiology for example, I'm still going to recommend that you take the Scarab for the trip. When we're talking about utility, we're talking about the amount of things we can do with the SRV we're looking at. On paper, the Scorpion can do anything that the Scarab can do, with one major difference. The Scorpion doesn't have a wave scanner. For those who don't use it and don't know that it's a module you can turn off, this is a blessing. But for explorers, it means that scratching together some jumbonium is going to be a real pain in the ass. Aside from that, it can fit 2 cargo canisters. It has a data scanner and a composition scanner as well. So really the wave scanner is the only thing that it doesn't have that the Scarab does. Lethality is where the Scorpion is supposed to dominate. It makes sense, right? It's a military vehicle, but if you're expecting to roll into town and immediately waffle stomp everyone who looks at you sideways, you're in for a shock. The Scorpion still requires a bit of skill to use properly. The surge repeater, while essentially being a fire hose that shoots plasma bolts, has a wide spread, making it an accuracy through volume weapon. The Achilles launcher operates about the same as a ship-launched seeker missile, albeit with a longer reload time. When attacking larger or weaker opponents like the Goliath or Skimmer respectively, the repeater really shines. Goliaths are large enough to catch that spread like norovirus in a cruise ship swimming pool, while Skimmer hulls are made of paper mache. Against something as large and well armored as a Goliath though, you might want to pepper in a few missiles as well. Ground troops are likely going to be the bulk of what most players are going to be fighting though, so I want to discuss that a bit. This is where the whole spray and pray approach begins to fail. While you can pump out war crimes worth of potential damage with your repeater, it's useless if you're not hitting your target. My first rodeo with the Scorpion, I ended up taking way more damage than I was expecting, while I was waiting for enough of my shots to connect and kill my targets. So I ended up actually dying. And that's where the Scarab really shows its colors. Its plasma repeater is far more accurate over long ranges, and can let you pick off targets before they can get close enough to start shooting back. If you're fighting in the Scorpion, you have to get up close and personal, engaging targets in close to mid-ranges. If you're not moving, you're just digging your own grave. While this might sound like a drawback, if you're using the Scorpion wisely, you can clear a settlement a lot faster than you could with a Scarab. When we're talking about your missiles in this scenario, it's best to use them to blow the shields off of crowded enemies, or finish off unshielded targets once you've worn that off with a repeater, or to harass long-range targets to push them into cover. With the repeater, I wouldn't advise using it at long ranges, unless you're trying to get in the final shots on an already wounded enemy. For mid-range targets, your best bet is going to be against out-in-the-open targets. And for short-range targets, it doesn't matter. Even if they're standing right next to cover, they're not going to have enough time to get behind it. Now, if you absolutely have to engage a target that's outside of mid-range, I highly suggest doing berm drills on nearby hills or trenches. Pop up, shoot, 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 fall back. With enough luck, the enemy won't be able to land as many hits on you as you can on them. Using these techniques, you'll have much better chances with your Scorpion, even more so than you would with the Scarab when you're trying to take a settlement that has ground troops. It used to be that I would sit in my Scarab and blast down my enemies before getting out and finishing off the last few and going out to loot the settlement. This was until I got better gear, to the point where I was more vulnerable in an SRV than I was on foot. But now with the Scorpion, I find that blowing away the guards while mounted up is a viable tactic again, and I do like that. The Scorpion feels much more powerful, and adding another person to the mix that acts as your gunner so that you can worry more about avoiding obstacles and gunfire makes it so much better. So for combat, it's Scorpion all day. If you like the whole scout sniper approach, you still might want to kick around in your Scarab with a Manicore Executioner on your back. But for your average ground pounder, it's hard to pass up the Scorpion. Now let's get to some of the things that didn't really fall into the other categories, or I just forgot until now to include. Something that maybe I should have mentioned during maneuverability would be the jump jets on these things. Now, unsurprisingly, the Scarab has much better jump capabilities than the Scorpion. While the Scarab can jump over mountains, ridges, and even ships, the Scorpion can really only jump over smaller rocks, smaller hills, things like that. Which isn't to say that it's useless, it has plenty of uses to it, but you're just not going to be able to use it as your own personal little flying machine like you can with the Scarab. Which shouldn't detract from it at all, this is a ground vehicle after all. And one of the reasons why people were gliding around with the Scarab in the first place was to deal with the fact that it kept spinning out. Seeing as that's less of a problem with the Scorpion, I think that it kind of is a wash in that regard. Another thing that might be more important to some people than others would be the field of view. The Scorpion has a tighter field of view, being at 180 degrees instead of the more or less 360 degrees that the Scarab has. This can make it a little bit more difficult to identify different planetary features as well as objectives, but only by a small margin. Something that I should have mentioned in utility as well is that the Scarab now has a maximum capacity of 4 cargo canisters, where it used to be 2. So while the Scorpion has a maximum of 2, which was the old Scarab standard, now it is still only half as good as a Scarab. So again, if you're taking out something specifically for transporting cargo around, it's going to be the Scarab coming out on top with its increased mobility. If you're taking it through a battlefield, it's going to be the Scorpion. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with the Scorpion. At first, I'm not going to lie, I was kind of afraid that they were just going to pump out another Scarab, but with a different gun on top. We might get some slight model alterations, and bada bing, bada boom, we got ourselves a new SRV, finally. And the worst part is, I would have been satisfied with that, because it's been so long since we had any new SRV. It's been since we had an SRV, since we had a new SRV. What I'm trying to say is, after, 6 years? It's finally here. And, yeah, it's pretty good. The other thing that I was afraid of was that the Scorpion was going to be too overpowered, that there would be absolutely no reason to be using a Scarab anymore. And so you would see the justification of the Scarab being, well, it costs less, or they're easier to find, which has never stopped anyone in Elite Dangerous. But what I'm really excited for is the possibility of new content that is going to come with the Scorpion, because as it currently stands, there wasn't really a huge need for the Scorpion. No one was calling out that we need a bigger, badder SRV. No one really said that. Now, plenty of people have said that we need a new SRV, sure, And plenty of people have said that we need a two-seater SRV. Yeah, that's also true. But no one's really said that we need a big, beefy tank that can obliterate anything in its way. So I'm interested to see how this turns out, what Frontier is doing, because they never really release any content without using it to set up something later on. It could be years down the road, but there's always something later down the road. And seeing as this was also one of the things that was leaked from the data mining from the alpha, it could mean that other things from that same leak are right around the corner. I'm pretty interested to see ground Thargoids after all, but that's a topic for another video entirely. For now, I'm just happy that we have the Scorpion, we finally have another SRV, and that I can roll around with my friends on the surface. If you like the content in this video and you want to help me out, please just give me a like, and if you would, a subscribe, and I'll see you out there in the black, Commanders. Oh, and also check out my Twitch. I do things there sometimes.